The waves crashed against the shore as the fisherman cast his net, expecting nothing more than another humble catch. But fate had other plans. When he pulled a drowning girl from the sea, he believed he was saving just another lost soul. What he didn't know was that she was no ordinary girl. She was a missing princess, heir to a kingdom that believed her gone forever. How long could the truth stay hidden? And what would happen when destiny came to reclaim her? The storm raged over the vast ocean, howling winds tearing through the night as waves crashed mercilessly against the rocky shore. The sky, once a peaceful canvas of stars, was now a battleground of dark clouds and flashes of lightning. Amidst the chaos, a small fishing boat struggled against the sea's fury. In the boat, a lone fisherman named Rafik fought against the wind, his hands firm on the oars. Years of battling the unpredictable waters had made him strong, but tonight the ocean was relentless. He knew he had to return to shore before the storm grew worse. Just as he turned his boat toward land, something caught his eye, a figure drifting among the waves. For a moment, he thought it was his mind playing tricks on him, but then he saw it again. A body, barely afloat, tossed by the merciless sea. Without a second thought, Rafik plunged his oar into the water and maneuvered the boat closer. The waves fought him, threatening to capsize his small vessel, but he refused to turn away. As he reached out, his hands grasped delicate fabric, soaked and torn, but finer than anything he had ever touched. With all his strength, he pulled the unconscious figure aboard. A girl. She was barely breathing, her face pale, lips tinged blue from the cold. Her dress, though ruined by the sea, was unlike anything a commoner would wear. Her golden bracelets and intricate earrings gleamed under the moonlight as the storm began to subside. Rafik wasted no time. He wrapped her in his fishing cloak and rowed back to shore as fast as his arms allowed. By the time he reached land, the storm had faded into a distant rumble, leaving behind only scattered rain and the soft whisper of waves against the shore. Lifting the girl into his arms, he hurried to his small hut by the beach. His home was simple, built from wood and thatched palm leaves, filled only with what a fisherman needed to survive. He laid her on his sleeping mat, carefully placing a warm cloth over her. She remained unconscious, her breath shallow but steady. Who was she? How had she ended up in the middle of the ocean? His village was small, and he knew everyone who lived there. This girl was a stranger. As he sat beside her, waiting for her to awaken, his thoughts wandered. If she had come from a shipwreck, why had no one else washed ashore? And why was she dressed in such fine clothing? Something about her was different, special. Hours passed before she finally stirred. A soft groan escaped her lips, and her fingers twitched beneath the covers. Rafik leaned forward, watching as her eyes fluttered open, deep, striking eyes filled with confusion and fear. "You're safe," he said gently, offering her a small cup of water. "Drink this." She hesitated before weakly reaching for the cup. Her hands were delicate, yet they trembled as she brought the water to her lips. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "My home," Rafik replied. "I found you in the ocean. Do you remember what happened?" Her brows furrowed as she struggled to recall. I don't know," she murmured. "The water, the storm, everything is blurry." Rafik frowned. She didn't know. Was it the shock, or had she truly lost her memory? "Do you remember your name?" he asked. The girl closed her eyes as if trying to grasp something just beyond her reach. After a long pause, she whispered, "Amira." It was a name fit for royalty, but Rafik dismissed the thought. Perhaps she was from a wealthy merchant family, one that had been sailing nearby. "Amira," he repeated. "You're lucky to be alive. The sea doesn't spare many." She looked at him then, really looked at him, his weathered face, the kindness in his eyes, the simple clothing that marked him as a fisherman. "You saved me," she murmured. Rafik nodded. "It was the will of the sea that I found you." She glanced around the small hut, taking in the fishing nets hanging on the walls, the wooden table with a single lantern, the scent of salt and fish lingering in the air. This was a life far removed from whatever she had once known. "Thank you," she said softly. "I owe you my life." Rafik shook his head. "You owe me nothing. Rest now. We'll figure out what to do once you're strong again." As Amira lay back, exhaustion pulling her into sleep once more, Rafik sat beside her, deep in thought. Somewhere out there, Someone must be looking for her. But who? And why had fate placed her in his path? He did not know that the girl sleeping under his roof was no ordinary survivor. She was a lost princess, an heir whose disappearance had shaken an entire kingdom. And soon, the world would come searching for her. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the quiet fishing village, its light reflecting off the rippling waves. The storm had long passed, leaving behind only the scent of salt in the air. Inside his humble hut, Rafik watched over the sleeping girl, wondering what fate had brought her to him. Amira stirred, her breath uneven as she slowly opened her eyes. The confusion remained, but there was something else now, awareness. She looked around, taking in the woven mats, the fishing nets hanging against the walls, and the simple wooden table with a single clay jug of water. This was not a palace, nor was it the fine quarters of a noble family. She turned to Rafik, who sat by the entrance, mending a torn fishing net. His rough hands moved with practiced ease, his expression calm despite the questions she knew must have been running through his mind. "You're awake," he said, setting the net aside. "How do you feel?" Amira pushed herself up slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion still lingering in her limbs. "Better," she admitted, though her voice was still weak. "But I don't know where I am." Rafik poured her a cup of water and handed it to her. "This is my home. I found you in the sea last night." She took a sip, the coolness soothing her dry throat. "The sea," she echoed, her mind trying to grasp the memories buried beneath the fog. "I remember the water, the waves. But nothing before that." Rafik studied her carefully. "You told me your name is Amira. Do you remember anything else? Where you came from?" She frowned, frustration flickering across her face. I don't know," she admitted. "I feel like I should, but when I try to remember, it slips away." Rafik nodded slowly. "Then for now, don't force it. Your mind will remember when it's ready." Amira exhaled, glancing at the modest surroundings. "You're a fisherman?" He chuckled. "What gave it away? The nets or the smell of fish?" Despite her confusion, a small smile touched her lips. "Both." Rafik stood and motioned toward the door. "Come outside when you feel strong enough. You should see where you are." She watched him leave before carefully pulling the blanket off and swinging her legs to the floor. Her dress was still damp in places, the fine embroidery ruined by the sea. It felt familiar, yet foreign. When she stepped outside, the sight before her took her breath away. The village was small, nestled against the shoreline. Simple homes made of wood and thatch stood in neat rows, with narrow paths winding between them. In the distance, fishermen hauled in their morning catch, calling out greetings to one another. Women carried baskets filled with fruit, and children laughed as they chased each other along the shore. It was peaceful. Nothing like the grand halls or bustling markets that faintly flickered in her mind. Rafik stood by his boat, checking the ropes securing it to the dock. He looked up when he saw her, nodding in approval. "The fresh air will do you good." Amira stepped forward, her feet sinking slightly into the warm sand. "This place, it feels so different," she murmured. He raised an eyebrow. "Different from what?" She hesitated. I don't know." Rafik sighed. "Your memory is stubborn." She smiled faintly. "Like the sea." He chuckled, but before he could respond, a voice called out. "Rafik." "Who's this?" A woman approached, balancing a basket of fish on her hip. Her dark eyes flickered over Amira with curiosity. "A traveler," Rafik said simply. "The sea brought her here." The woman, clearly skeptical, gave Amira a slow once-over. "She doesn't look like a traveler. Her hands are too soft, her dress too fine." She leaned closer. "You're not from here, are you?" Amira shook her head. "No, but I don't know where I am from." The woman exchanged a glance with Rafik. "Strange. There have been rumors." Rafik's brow furrowed. "Rumors?" The woman lowered her voice. "Of a lost princess. A noble girl gone missing from a grand ship. They say she was taken, or worse, lost to the sea." A chill ran down Amira's spine. She felt an inexplicable pull toward those words. "A princess," she echoed. The woman shrugged. "Who knows? But if she's alive, her family is surely searching for her." With that, she continued on her way, leaving Amira deep in thought. Rafik crossed his arms. Does any of that sound familiar? Amira hesitated, her fingers brushing against the golden bracelet on her wrist, one detail that the sea had not stolen. I don't know, she whispered. But in her heart, something stirred. A feeling that the world she had known was far greater than this village. And if the rumors were true, she wasn't just any lost girl. She was someone important. Someone people were searching for. She was a princess. But why had fate brought her to a fisherman? And what would happen when the truth finally surfaced? The days passed, and though Amira still could not remember her past, she began to settle into life in the fishing village. She helped Rafik mend nets, carried baskets of fresh fish to the market, and watched the sunset over the sea each evening. Though the villagers remained curious about her, they soon accepted her as one of their own. But deep inside, she knew this life was not where she belonged. Late one afternoon, as she sat by the shore, watching the waves roll in and out, she felt an ache in her chest. The ocean, vast and endless, held answers she could not reach. The fragments of memory that surfaced in her mind were fleeting, a distant voice calling her name, the feeling of silk beneath her fingers, the echo of laughter in grand halls. But none of it felt complete. Rafik approached, carrying a bundle of firewood. He noticed her distant gaze. Thinking about the past again? She nodded. I feel like it's just out of reach, like I'm standing at the edge of something important, but I can't step forward. He set the wood down beside her. Maybe it's better that way. She turned to him, frowning. How can you say that? He shrugged. Sometimes, not knowing is a gift. If your past is painful, maybe forgetting is a blessing. She sighed, running her fingers through the sand. But what if it's not just my past? What if it's bigger than me? Rafik studied her carefully. You're thinking about the rumors. Amira nodded. What if I am that lost princess? What if my family is looking for me? He exhaled deeply. And if you are, what then? Do you leave this life behind and return to a world that abandoned you to the sea? She hesitated. I don't know, but I need to find out. Before Rafik could respond, hurried footsteps approached them. A young boy from the village, breathless and wide-eyed, stopped in front of them. There are soldiers in the market, he panted. They're asking about a missing girl. Amira's heart skipped a beat. Rafik stood quickly. Soldiers. The boy nodded. They say she is of noble blood. They are offering a reward for anyone who knows where she is. Amira's hands trembled. This was it. The truth she had been chasing had finally caught up with her. Rafik turned to her, his jaw clenched. If they find you, everything changes. She swallowed hard. I have to go to them. His eyes darkened. And what if they're not here to take you home? What if they're here to silence you? A chill ran down her spine. What do you mean? Rafik lowered his voice. Think about it, Amira. If you really are this lost princess, why did you end up in the sea in the first place? People don't just disappear. What if someone wanted you gone? She shivered at the thought. Had she been betrayed? Had someone tried to take her life? The boy looked between them anxiously. What should we do? Rafik made a decision. We need to be sure before we reveal anything. If they're truly looking for you, we'll know soon enough. But until then, you stay hidden. Amira hesitated but nodded. She could not risk stepping forward without knowing the truth. That night, Rafik went into the village alone. He moved quietly through the market, keeping to the shadows. The soldiers stood near the well, speaking with the village elder. Their armor gleamed under the lanterns, their expressions serious. She was last seen on a ship bound for the capital, one soldier said. But after the storm, the vessel was lost. If she survived, she may be hiding in a place like this. The elder nodded slowly. And if she is found? The soldier hesitated before answering. She is to be brought back at once. The king is offering a generous reward. Rafik narrowed his eyes. The words sounded noble, but something felt wrong. Why had the soldier hesitated? Why did he not say she was to be returned to her family with joy? He knew now, Amira was in danger. He turned and left before he could be seen, his mind racing. If she was truly the missing princess, someone powerful did not want her to return. When he reached the hut, Amira stood waiting for him, anxiety in her eyes. "What did you hear?" He took her hands in his. "They're looking for you. But we can't trust them." Her breath hitched. "Then what do we do?" His grip tightened. "We find the truth first. Before they find you." The answers were close, but so was the danger. And time was running out. The weight of Rafiq's words settled heavily in Amira's chest. The soldiers were looking for her, but something about their search did not feel right. If she was truly the lost princess, why did their words lack warmth? Why did they hesitate when speaking of her return? She sat by the small fire in Rafiq's hut, her mind spinning with questions. "I have to go," she murmured. "I can't hide forever." Rafiq knelt beside her, his expression tense. "Not yet. We don't know who sent them. If someone wanted you gone, walking into their hands could be a mistake." Amira clenched her hands. "Then what do we do?" Rafiq took a deep breath. "We need to get answers on our own terms." A plan formed between them. They would not wait for the soldiers to find Amira. Instead, they would leave the village before sunrise, traveling toward the capital. If she truly was the missing heir, someone there would recognize her. But they had to be careful. If the wrong people learned she was alive, they might try to silence her before she could reclaim her past. That night, as the village slept, Rafiq packed a small bundle of supplies. Amira, dressed in simple clothes borrowed from a villager, kept her hood pulled low. The fine jewelry she had washed ashore with was hidden deep in the folds of her bag. "We have to leave before the soldiers return at dawn," Rafiq whispered. Amira nodded. "I'm ready." They moved swiftly through the village, avoiding the main roads. The air was thick with tension. Amira's heart pounded as they reached the outskirts of the village, slipping into the dense forest path that led toward the capital. The journey was slow, and every sound in the darkness set them on edge. The rustling of leaves, the distant call of an owl, it all felt louder, heavier, now that they were running toward an unknown fate. By midday, they stopped to rest near a quiet stream. Amira crouched by the water, staring at her reflection. The face looking back at her was familiar yet unfamiliar. Who was she really? Rafiq sat beside her. "Do you feel anything familiar?" She sighed. "I don't know. The closer we get, the more I feel like something is waiting for me. But I don't know if it's a home or a trap." Rafiq's jaw tightened. "Then we stay cautious." As they continued walking, the road widened, leading to a busy town just outside the capital's walls. The air was alive with voices, merchants calling out their wares, horses trotting along the dirt roads. Amira pulled her hood lower. "If anyone recognizes me..." Rafiq gave her a reassuring nod. "We don't stay long. We listen, we gather information, and we move." They split up, blending into the crowds. Amira wandered near a market stall where two women whispered about the royal family. She leaned in, pretending to examine a piece of cloth. "They say the king still searches for his daughter," one woman murmured. The other scoffed. "And yet, no one speaks of the queen anymore. Strange, isn't it?" Amira's breath caught. "The queen? My mother?" She turned away before they noticed her listening. Across the square, she spotted Rafiq near a group of men, his face unreadable. When he met her eyes, she knew he had learned something. They met in a quiet alley. "The king never stopped searching for his daughter," Rafiq said. "But there's more. The queen, your mother, disappeared shortly after you did." Amira felt her stomach twist. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Rafiq admitted. "But we need to get inside the palace." She hesitated. "What if we walk into a trap?" He looked at her firmly. "Then we make sure we walk in prepared." That night, they found an old servant's entrance near the palace gardens. The walls loomed high, but years of neglect had left cracks in the stone. They climbed carefully, slipping into the shadows. Inside, the halls were dimly lit by torches. The grandeur of the palace was overwhelming: ornate tapestries, marble floors, golden chandeliers. It stirred something deep within Amira. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the corridor. "Who's there?" Amira and Rafiq froze. A guard stepped forward, his torchlight illuminating her face. His eyes widened in shock. "Princess Amira," he gasped. Amira's breath caught. "He knows me." Before she could respond, more footsteps approached. The moment of truth had arrived. Would she be welcomed back as a lost heir? Or had she just walked into the hands of those who wanted her gone forever?